At my best, as Scott Caraboolad, I was done with this life. And I call out
Sorry, I'm late for class. First topic I'd like to talk about is suicide. For me, it's very close to home, and it's odd because I never thought in a million years when I was growing up, especially if you would have asked me in high school, because I did have a pretty decent childhood, that 25 years down the road that I would be seconds away from ending my own life. And anytime I hear a story of that, some child or youth has taken their own life, it's not necessarily just that action that bothers me about it. It's actually the misery and suffering that that poor child has been going through to get to that point. And I know that feeling. I did everything. I had everything. I had endless money. I was a motorcycle rock star for most of my life. And I don't say that anymore to inflate my ego, because I became that bottomless pit, drug addict, alcoholic, lost soul that lost everything. So when someone asks me to talk about suicide, I want to look in those individuals' eyes right now and tell you there is hope. There's people that love you. I can't talk about this subject without shedding a tear myself. On October 4th, 2011, I was seconds away from ending my life. I was 40 years old. I was far from high school material. I was desperate for help. I was desperate for answers. As a matter of fact, that's the problem with suicide. Most people end up doing it because they've exhausted all the options. The biggest challenge in my life was the noise up here. I think that's the biggest challenge for all of us, regardless of where it's come from. It's how we're going to deal with it. And the choices that we make are choices. Because in the end, I blamed everybody. But when I was going to end my life, it was my choice. Finally, I chose to do something different than what I was used to. I chose to trust certain people that loved me unconditionally. Most of the love around me was conditional, which means as long as I was making money, as long as I was supplying drugs and alcohol, as long as I owned things that people can use, they seemed to love me. But when it was all over, when it was gone, when I became an alcoholic, when I became suicidal, when I became a drug addict, when I lost my family, when I lost all the money, where were those people then? The things we're going to talk about today, and the things that we're going to continue to talk about as we go through these lessons, are 4 fundamental things in my life that I now realize I need. Love. Love from the people that I'm talking about that are unconditionally, that will die for me because they truly love me. And you got to question, where does that type of love come from? It might not be mom and dad. So the first one is unconditional love. The second one is hope. Hope always exists. I did know somewhere, even if it was 1% of my heart, that there's got to be an answer. And that led me to mentors. The mentors are the ones that loved me unconditional, that provided the hope that I needed because they were living the life that I wanted. And it wasn't about the money and all the bells and whistles. It was about their families, their peace of mind. And the fourth and final one is purpose. What is your true purpose in life? And I know one of the reasons why I was suicidal is because I couldn't make sense of my purpose. Purpose is love, receiving it and giving it back. If you want to hear more of my story, uncensored, join us for our live webinar. See you then. lot of times when we do the live school assemblies, I'll talk about drugs, and you'll get the section of the youth that will kind of cheer about it. And you know what? I get it. And when I first started out, I didn't need any drugs. I loved life. For most of my childhood and teenage years, I never touched it. I couldn't even imagine touching it. And I really even hate saying that, just because in the end it didn't matter. The only thing that mattered is I chose to start using them at some point in my life. So whether you're using them now or it's something that's so far from your mind, you're thinking, no, I'll never use them, we still need to talk about them here today. Can I sit here and hopefully say to you guys, don't use drugs? And that you would believe me, that when I let them into my life, that it slowly destroyed my life? I don't think anybody starts out seeking and wanting to become a professional drug addict. And you might laugh at that statement right there, but that's what I became. That's the part that's scary about drug addiction. It always starts off like you can handle it. Trust me, I know every side of drug addiction. It doesn't start off as a heroin addict. It doesn't start off as overdose. It starts off in baby steps, just like anything else in life. And the addiction comes in that relief that you get from that drug, that temporary relief from life or the stress or the abuse or whatever you're going through in your personal life. Once again, I can't get into this topic without getting deep into the misery, not only that I brought on to myself through drugs, but I brought on to everybody around me. And at the time, I had kids, I had a beautiful wife, I had seemingly everything that the world could give me, and I soon started to lose it all because of drug addiction. And what was starting out as a prescription drug turned into the worst street in any drug. People always have this kind of glorified drug addiction type of analogy in their life, saying, oh, I don't use that kind of drug, I'm only going to use this. But in the end, any drug addict, anybody that's overdosing, anybody that's severely suffering from addiction will do anything, anywhere, anytime. That was me. Hopefully you have a great support team in your life. Hopefully you'll never touch a drug in your life. But the temptation can come from anywhere. It can come from your friend in sports, or the friend in your neighborhood, or mom and dad. And my drug addiction went on for over 15 years. The last 5 years of my addictions were the ones that were insane. But we're shooting this video footage because there are answers. Why did I start taking drugs in the first place? Is because I couldn't get the chatter to stop in my mind. But we're here today because there's always hope. There's a way to slow down that mind. There's a way to get that noise out of your head. There's people around you that can help grab you out of the situation that you may be in, no matter how bad it is. We're doing this because we have unconditional love. So now that we have it, we can give it to you. We can deliver that through hope. Where does the hope come from? It comes from all of us that have survived those storms. And how do we get through that? Because we have mentors. I have elders, mentors in my life that can provide me hope, which once again leads to purpose. I was a professional drug addict. I blamed everybody. I even blamed my kids that were babies at the time. But I'm not that man today. And the only reason I tear up is because of the time I wasted. And if I can say one thing to stop you guys from wasting any time of your life, then this will all be worth it. And that's my purpose. So, if you want a different life, you must make different choices. Obviously, there's so many different relationships that an individual will go through in their lives. There's the mom and dad love type of relationship. There's the brother-sister. There's the friend type of relationship. When I started to change my life, I had to really self-examine. And I had to understand one thing, that because I was to the point, I was 40 years old and I wanted to end my life, maybe I should have listened to those that had good advice. Starting with the teachers early on in my life that I basically ignored and said, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Or even my mom, how many times I say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, Mom. Or then it was my wife, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, I can tell you this, they did. And who was the one that paid the ultimate price? Me. So relationships is such a big topic. I'm going to try to break it down into the simplest form. A relationship is either right or wrong. We can't possibly know everything. So you have to look at the foundation of any relationship. Unfortunately, I know that it is mostly developed from childhood, and the unfortunate part that I brought up about this is I know now from traveling around the country and talking to people, whether they were in high school or whether they're locked up in prison or whether they're drug addicts on the street, they share something that's all common. They're lost. So they're looking for a way out, or they're looking for advice. They're looking for change in their life in a positive way. And that starts with relationships. A lot of times in drug addiction that we just talked about, well, guess what? Those that are around that person, all the relationships that I had in my drug addiction were with drug addicts. I joke around when we go into prisons, and it's not really funny, but if you want to be a good bank robber, hang around other bank robbers. If you want to be a great football player, then hang around other great football players. Or if you want to be a great lawyer, hang around those that are in that field, that are great lawyers themselves. Or a teacher, hang around a great teacher. So there's the good and the bad to everything in life, but it all revolves around those that you surround yourself with and what they are feeding into you. So if Mom and Dad didn't have a good relationship with me, how could I possibly have a good relationship with anybody else? Now, if you are in that situation, does that mean you're doomed and there's no hope? Of course not. That's why we're here. I know the best way for my children to enter great relationships is if I have a great relationship with them. So my daughter is 16 right now and starting to date. And I trust that she will make good decisions. Why? Because my wife and I showed her the way and the proper way to be loved and to love others. Relationships revolve around that, once again, that motive behind the people involved. All I know is a lot of times we rush into relationships for the wrong reasons. And through pain and suffering, we figure it out. We figure out that we've probably entered the abusive relationship that we should have never got into. But just like the addiction and the drugs and the suicidal thoughts and all that stuff that can compound in our lives, it was our choice in the end. And we can change that. We can change it here today. So many people get in abusive relationships, whether it's mental abuse or physical abuse. It's never too late. The first thing I had to do to change my life was to start telling people what was wrong in my life. Whether it was the drug addiction, whether it was the abusive relationships, or whether it was the suicidal thoughts, or whether it was the emptiness. If I don't tell people that there's a problem existing, then it's really hard for people to step in and help. Search your heart in all relationships. Ask yourself, is this right or is this wrong? If you don't have that answer, then I plead with you to find those that you can ask for their guidance. The foundation of it all is unconditional love, without a doubt. I talked about in the last topics about drugs and that I became a professional drug addict, and a lot of people will be like, huh? Like, was that a profession? Can I sign up? No, it's not a good thing. You know, I became a professional alcoholic. And once again, nobody starts out to be an alcoholic. Like, you know, especially when I was in high school and entering high school, I said it before, I love life and never really needed that stuff back then. But alcohol is like the silent killer. I just want to say that again. Alcohol can be the silent killer. You have to look at your own individual life. How's that working out for you? You know, are you able to set it down? Has it started to consume your life? When I first started drinking, it was in my teenage years, and, you know, I could handle it because I never got out of control, and I still loved life. And I always kind of separate the two. There's the life on nature's terms. That means no additives, no mind-altering things. And then there's, life outside of that. And they always look different. I don't care who you are. Any chemical that we add into our body, whether it's drugs or alcohol, whether it's liquid, powder, whether it's a needle, whether it changes your mind, your thought process. There was a time in my life where I could drink, I could set it down, and I could still function. But oddly enough, there came a time in my life where I couldn't set it down. It was never enough. More problems existed. Now they were existing because of my drug addiction and alcoholism. And the hardest part was it was legal and everybody justified drinking. It's so funny now looking back. I used to say, I have the worst luck. Bad luck follows me. There's like a cloud of bad luck. No, it was my choices in my environment that I was creating. I needed to clean up my act. I needed to look at myself and say, is alcohol in my life good or bad? Is it helping me become more productive in life, in relationships, in school? Or is it stripping those things away? In the end, everybody was focused on the drugs and alcohol because it was definitely killing me. But I knew that in the baseline of all this, in the background of all this, it was because I was not happy anymore in my life. I was suffering and I was miserable. And I was just using the drugs and the alcohol to try to numb those constant thoughts. And for a minute, it seems like it works. For a minute, it seems like that alcohol gives you the courage or opens you up or helps you communicate. And at night, we can always justify it, and you get so deep into it that it seems like it's okay. But it's the mornings that I always challenge people to look at. How are those mornings after you drink? How are those decisions that you made that night affecting you this morning? There's so many stories of stuff that happens to young people in high school that are crazy regarding parties and drinking, but I challenge each and every one of you. I hope that nobody is drinking and nobody's an alcoholic at this stage, but I know the truth. I know that there are people in the schools right now that are suffering from alcoholism. But once again, the reason why we're here today is because we love you and there's hope. And hope exists from those that overcome alcoholism. So I ask you once again, how is it working for you in your life if it is in your life? I know personally there's no room in my life for alcohol. I don't care about it anymore because I love life on life's terms. I found that love again. I did lose it, but I found it again. There's always hope. If you're struggling today, reach out. If you keep it inside, it's just going to get worse. I have a 5-year-old at home, and since I changed my life, I got to watch him be born. I have a different understanding of life, and I got to see his innocence, and I got to see his beauty, and I got to see the miracle of life. And I missed that on my first two because I was out and about traveling the world, drunk and high and whatever, out of my mind. But I didn't miss it on this last one. And I don't think that's coincidence. So I learned so much from my baby as I'm looking at him and seeing that everything that goes into his little life from this day forward is going to determine what kind of little man that he's going to turn out to be. So everybody wants to look at a drug addict that's about to overdose, or maybe that overdosed, whether they're 17 or 47 or 97, or that criminal, and they want to just cast them away. But I'll argue with them. You got to put yourself in those other people's places, and that's where bullying stops. For a second, just stop before you open your mouth. And I do the same thing. I'm guilty of some of this stuff, even to this day. But once again, it stops with you, and it stops with me. It's our choice to open that mouth and spit something toxic out or to keep it shut. Because you never know what that person's been through. You never know where that person's coming from. You never know if that person was just born straight into the lion's den itself. How dare I judge anybody in my life? I don't know whether they've been blessed or cursed. I know every time I spoke poorly of somebody else, maybe there was no consequences for me then, but you better believe they came around 10, 15 years later. Whether it was me breaking a law or whether it was me being toxic with my tongue. Bullying is casting negative judgment on anybody's life. Whether you're young or old, picture yourself in their shoes. And that comes back to the love and the hope, the mentors and purpose. The purpose of our lives are to help each other out. That's the purpose of me as a parent and as a friend, to help my friends up or my children. I can either do one or two things. I can help ignite their life or I can help extinguish it. That's it. And I know today, I hated myself. That's why I was a bully. And I can say that to my kids. If somebody's making fun of them or giving them a hard time physically or mentally, my daughter went through both, which was crazy. And she's a beautiful girl, an innocent girl that just wants to love on others. Or whether it was my son getting in fights in the schoolyard because of his shoes. The thing is, I know that the person that's acting on my kids is more miserable than probably I can imagine at that time. And that stinks. Because it doesn't stop a bully from doing what they're doing. But maybe you can help. Maybe you can help someone else that's being bullied. Or maybe you can help, if you are the bully, to stop being a bully. And whether it's on social media, which is the easiest form of bullying there is, or whether it's in the hallways at school, you're not going to be rewarded for being a bully. You're going to be rewarded for being the one that is anti-bully. The best thing I can say to a drug addict, alcoholic, a bully, or somebody that is involved in bad relationships, or somebody that's on the edge of committing suicide is the best thing I can hope for is something is bothering you that I've said here today. There's always hope. It's the whole essence of being properly nurtured. And whether it comes from mom or dad, in the end, it's up to you. If you don't have good support at home, it's out there. I challenge you to find it. You can change anything in your life today by making the next right decision. That's all I did back in 2011 when I changed my life. I didn't make all the decisions for my future. I just made the next right decision. It's as simple as the next few steps you take from after watching this video. What are you going to do? You're going to help lift somebody up, or you're going to help snuff somebody out. If you want to hear more of my story, uncensored, join us for our live webinar. See you then.